guys, welcome back to another episode of Many Tribes, One Kingdom. It's your good buddy John, and today we have another one of our cautionary tales videos for you. Today we'll be discussing Amnon, what happens when you're never told no. But before we begin, I do have to give an obligatory trigger warning. This video does contain the topic of sexual assault, so if that is a triggering topic for you, I recommend that you maybe don't watch this video, or if you are under the age of 18, I recommend that this is not the video for you. We have other videos you can watch, go watch one of them. But for everybody else, let's get started. Alright, Amnon. So, our passage of scripture that we'll be examining is 2 Samuel chapter 13. We're going to start with verses 1 through 6. Now it was after this that Absalom the son of David had a beautiful sister whose name was Tamar, and Amnon the son of David loved her. Amnon was so frustrated because of his sister Tamar that he made himself ill, for she was a virgin, and it seemed hard to Amnon to do anything to her. But Amnon had a friend whose name was Jonadab, the son of Shimea, David's brother. And Jonadab was a very shrewd man. He said to him, "O son of the king, why are you so depressed morning after morning? Will you not tell me?" Then Amnon said to him, "I am in love with Tamar, the sister of my brother Absalom." Jonadab then said to him, "Lie down on your bed and pretend to be ill. When your father comes to see you, say to him, 'Please let my sister Tamar come and give me some food to eat, and let her prepare the food in my sight, that I may see it and eat from her hand.'" So Amnon lay down and pretended to be ill. When the king came to see him, Amnon said to the king, "Please let my sister Tamar come and make me a couple of cakes in my sight, that I may eat from her hand." Let's begin by setting the stage for the tragedy that is about to follow. So these might be some names you're not recognizing except for David. I don't need to introduce David. Amnon is David's firstborn son and is probably the crowned prince of Israel at the moment. As such, he may have been very used to getting his way all the time. He was probably quite spoiled. Absalom was another one of David's sons, and he and Tamar had a different mother than Amnon. As you know, David had several wives, and Amnon was the child of one of them, and Absalom and Tamar were the child of another one. And then Jonadab is David's nephew and a close friend to Amnon. This takes place after David's adultery with Bathsheba and his murder of Uriah. Now, for some unknown reason, Amnon develops an unhealthy infatuation with his own sister. Notice how he only calls her his sister when talking with David. The rest of the time, she's the sister of Absalom, or the sister of my brother. This may have been Amnon's way of justifying his lust. Regardless, he's obsessed with Tamar, so much so that he makes himself sick. And then enters Jonadab, who is honestly one of the worst friends anyone could have. He does take an interest in Amnon's issue, but instead of trying to help his friend, he encourages him. We see this all too often these days. People are told that they should do whatever they want sexually. For instance, if a biological man wants to put on a dress and makeup and pretend that he's a woman, we're told to play along with the illusion. We're told to fall in line. If a man wants to sleep with another man, we're told to fall in line with it. But in truth, a real friend would actually help their friend, not encourage them to do something so evil. But Jonadab instead gives Amnon advice on how to get alone with Tamar. Now sure, you can argue that Jonadab didn't explicitly tell Amnon to do what he does next, but he should have known his friend well enough to know by now what Amnon is capable of. And besides, Amnon's lust for Tamar should never have been encouraged in the first place. He should have been given real advice for how to combat his sinful thoughts, not encouraged to pursue them no matter what. You see the common trait with our world today. So Amnon does what Jonadab says and convinces David that he is sick and he needs his dear sister Tamar to come and nurse him back to health. Amnon may have been David's favorite son at the time, so he wouldn't tell him no. Let's keep reading. Now we're going to read verses 7 through 19. Then David sent to the house for Tamar, saying, "Go now to your brother Amnon's house. and prepare food for him. So Tamar went to her brother Amnon's house, and he was lying down. And she took dough, kneaded it, made cakes in his sight, and baked the cakes. She took the pan and dished them out before him, but he refused to eat. And Amnon said, "Have everyone go out from me." So everyone went out from him. Then Amnon said to Tamar, "Bring the food into the bedroom, that I may eat from your hand." So Tamar took the cakes which she had made, and brought them into the bedroom to her brother Amnon. When she brought them to him to eat, he took hold of her, and said to her, "Come, lie with me, my sister." But she answered him, "No, my brother. Do not violate me, for such a thing is not done in Israel. Do not do this disgraceful thing. As for me, where could I get rid of my reproach? And as for you, you will be like one of the fools in Israel. Now therefore, please speak to the king, for he will not withhold me from you." However, he would not listen to her. Since he was stronger than she, he violated her and lay with her. Then Amnon hated her with a very great hatred, for the hatred with which he hated her was greater than the love with which he had loved her. And Amnon said to her, "Get up, go away." But she said to him, "No, because this wrong in sending me away is greater than the other that you have done to me." Yet he would not listen to her. Then he called his young man who attended him and said, "Now throw this woman out of my presence and lock the door behind her." Now she had on a long-sleeved garment, for in this manner the virgin daughters of the king dressed themselves in robes. Then his attendant took her out and locked the door behind her. Tamar put ashes on her head and tore her long-sleeved garment, which was on her. And she put her hand on her head and went away, crying aloud as she went. Unfortunately, David gave Amnon exactly what he wanted. Pretending to be sick worked, and he was able to get Tamar alone with him. The fact that he sent all of his attendants out before he did what he did shows that it was not a spur-of-the-moment thing. Amnon didn't just see an opportunity and take it. He planned this. First, he tried to convince Tamar to sleep with him willingly, but when she refused, he raped her. Obviously, neither David nor Tamar knew what Amnon was planning. David was worried about his supposedly sick son, and Tamar seemed to want to help her brother. David wouldn't have willingly sent his daughter into this if he had known what Amnon had been planning. And second, and I'm going to be careful saying this because I don't know, but it's possible that Tamar might have even felt something similar to Amnon. Now, before you come at me in the comments, let me explain. Notice that when he tries to convince her, she suggests that he should talk to David and have him give her to him as a wife. Of course, she may have just said that to escape from her psychotic brother, but I would be interested to hear what you think in the comments. Either way, Tamar refuses to sleep with Amnon, and he won't take no for an answer. So he attacks her, and he forces her. After he gets what he wants, Amnon hates Tamar. Perhaps he felt shame for what he did and just wanted to sweep it all under the rug, just pretend it never happened. Or maybe he felt that sleeping with Tamar would make him happy, and it didn't. To Amnon, Tamar had become an idol, and now he realized what everyone who chases idols realizes eventually, and that's this. Their idol doesn't bring them happiness or solve any of their issues. Regardless of what his reasoning was, Amnon has his servant, whom I should also add bears some of the responsibility for what happens here. He has him throw Tamar out when she refuses to go away quietly. Unfortunately, many looked down on women who were sexually assaulted in those days, just like many do to men these days who are assaulted. Let's keep going. Verses 20 through 33. Then Absalom, her brother, said to her, "Has Amnon, your brother, been with you? But now keep silent, my sister. He is your brother. Do not take this matter to heart." So Tamar remained and was desolate in her brother Absalom's house. Now when King David heard of all these matters, he was very angry. But Absalom did not speak to Amnon either good or bad. For Absalom hated Amnon because he had violated his sister Tamar. Now it came about after 2 full years that Absalom had sheep shearers in Baal-hazor, which is near Ephraim, and Absalom invited all the king's sons. Absalom came to the king and said, "Behold now, your servant has sheep shearers. Please let the king and his servants go with your servant." But the king said to Absalom, "No, my son, we should not all go, for we will be burdensome to you." Although he urged him, he would not go, but blessed him. Then Absalom said, "If not, please let my brother Amnon go with us." And the king said to him, "Why should he go with you?" But when Absalom urged him, he let Amnon and all the king's sons go with him. Absalom commanded his servants, saying, "See now, when Amnon's heart is merry with wine, and when I say to you, 'Strike Amnon,' then put him to death. Do not fear. Have not I myself commanded you? Be courageous and be valiant." The servants of Absalom did to Amnon just as Absalom had commanded. Then all the king's sons arose, and each mounted his mule and fled. Now it was while they were on the way that the report came to David, saying, "Absalom has struck down all the king's sons, and not one of them is left." Then the king arose, tore his clothes, and lay on the ground, and all his servants were standing by with clothes torn. Jonadab, the son of Shemiah, David's brother, responded, "Do not let my lord suppose they have put to death all the young men, the king's sons, for Amnon alone is dead, because by the intent of Absalom this has been determined, since the day that he violated his sister Tamar. Now therefore do not let my lord the king take the report to heart. Namely, all the king's sons are dead, for only Amnon is dead." Now Absalom had fled, and the young man who was the watchman raised his eyes and looked, and behold, many people were coming from the road behind him by the side of the mountain. Jonadab said to the king, "Behold, the king's sons have come, according to your servant's word." So it happened. As soon as he had finished speaking, behold, the king's sons came and lifted their voices and wept, and also the king and all his servants wept very bitterly. Apparently, Amnon's obsession with Tamar was known to Absalom, because as soon as he saw his sister distraught, as soon as he saw the state that she was in, he knew exactly what had happened. At this point, Amnon is a dead man walking. I have to wonder why David did nothing here. It says he was angry, but it doesn't state whether he actually punished Amnon or not. Now, true, maybe he did, but we just don't know. Absalom did have to ask David for permission for Amnon to go with them, so maybe David had imprisoned him or something similar. Let me know what you think about that in the comments also. Or maybe David didn't feel he had the right to punish Amnon after what he'd done to Uriah and Bathsheba. Either way, for 2 years, Absalom has plotted his revenge. In those days, sheep shearing was considered a major event. It was a festival, and certainly a reason to have a party. Sheep shearing was a big thing. So Absalom invites his family to enjoy his prosperity with him, knowing that David would probably refuse to go so as to not put his son under financial stress. He does allow Absalom to take all of his brothers, including Amnon. Maybe David believed Absalom wanted to try and reconcile with Amnon. Maybe he believed he wanted Amnon to take responsibility. Maybe he believed Amnon had changed, or maybe he suspected what Absalom's real plan was. At this point, I need to wonder how clueless Amnon could be also. First, he seems to think he successfully swept his crimes under the rug. He seems to think that Tamar wouldn't say anything, and that Absalom wouldn't figure it out. Maybe he just thought he was smarter than everybody else. Maybe he thought he was better. And to make matters even worse, he actually thinks that Absalom has good intentions for him. He actually thinks Absalom, who is clearly very protective of his sister Tamar, wants anything to do with the man who violated her. I sympathize with Absalom here. I really do. If someone did that to my sister, my daughter, my wife, or my mother, I'd probably be out for blood too. I'm not going to lie to you. Of course, that's for the law to decide, not me, but I fully understand Absalom's feelings here. Maybe Amnon hadn't been punished, or maybe Absalom believed his punishment needed to be more severe. Either way, he has his servants get Amnon drunk, and then he has him put to death. Killing a king's son at the time was considered an extreme crime in those days. The kings of the ancient world had the divine right to rule according to their beliefs. And David actually received the divine right from God himself to rule the people of Israel. Amnon was the crowned prince and future king, so putting him to death was probably a terrifying thought for the servants. But Absalom reassures his servants he would protect them from any repercussions should they be caught. Essentially, Absalom is saying, I'm taking responsibility for this. If we get caught, it's on me, not on you. Once the deed is done, the rest of the princes are allowed to flee, to run away. Someone decided to tell David that Absalom had killed all of his sons. Maybe they had run away after Amnon and just assumed that Absalom was leading a coup for the throne, and that maybe, again, he had went ahead and killed the other sons as well after Amnon. No idea. Again, just a curious thing to think about. And once again, we do hear from Jonadab. Notice how little he actually cared about Amnon, despite the fact that they were friends. Maybe he regretted his part in Amnon's crime and what he had done to Tamar, or maybe he was trying to curry favor with David. Either way, he lets the king know that only Amnon is dead, and implies that his death was well-deserved. Once again, I can't say I blame Absalom here, especially if it seemed like the guilty Amnon had gotten away with what he had done to Tamar. I also feel for David here. Now, I myself do not have children, but I have heard that a parent outliving their child is heartbreaking. It's one of the worst experiences in the world, and for the briefest of moments, David believed he had outlived all of his sons except for Absalom. Now, whether he was crying for Amnon, relief for the rest of his sons being alive, or for the loss of Absalom, it doesn't say. Personally, I think it was a combination of all three. Despite what Amnon did, he was still David's son, and I imagine it would still be painful for the man of God, especially since it was very likely that Amnon never repented for what he did. But even more, David is weeping for Absalom. We find later on in the scriptures how much David loved his son Absalom. They had a very close bond. Let's finish reading this tragedy. We're going to be reading verses 37 through 39. Now Absalom fled and went to Talmai, the son of Ammihud, the king of Geshur, and David mourned for his son every day. So Absalom had fled and gone to Geshur, and was there 3 years. The heart of King David longed to go out to Absalom, for he was comforted concerning Amnon, since he was dead. Amnon's actions had lasting consequences. First off, Tamar. She lives the rest of her life traumatized by his actions, probably a pariah from society, certainly afraid, probably has nightmares, and she spent the rest of her life alone because of Amnon. Second, Amnon lost his own life in Absalom's quest for revenge. Amnon threw his entire life away in pursuit of this idol that he had made about Tamar. And third, this eventually leads to Absalom's own rebellion against his father and his attempt to seize the throne. A war breaks out in Israel, and Absalom eventually loses his life, causing David to mourn even worse than before. Now, Absalom's actions are best saved for a separate video. Comment if you're interested in me making a video on Absalom soon. So what can we learn from the story of Amnon? First, it is vital to give your children boundaries and raise them right. David was a man after God's own heart, but apparently he couldn't say no to his precious Amnon, even if he really should have. Second, we must learn to control our sinful desires. Amnon's desire to sexually possess his own sister was evil, despite how strongly he felt, despite what his feelings were, despite what he thought he felt. His desire for Tamar was wrong, and he should have known that. Third, it's important for us to surround ourselves with people who won't be afraid to call you out. Jonadab was not a real friend to Amnon, otherwise he would have counseled his friend away from such evil actions. Dustin and Caleb are some of my closest friends, and they will call me out when I'm doing something wrong or when I'm feeling something I shouldn't be feeling, when I'm doing anything that's against the Lord. Dustin and Caleb are quick to call me out, and I'm very grateful for that fact. Lastly, your idols will not bring you happiness. If you're obsessed with a woman, my brothers, she's not going to bring you happiness. My sisters, if you are obsessed with a man, he's not going to bring you happiness. Only God brings joy like that. Only God brings fulfillment and completion. In the end, Amnon's life story is one of selfishness. He only cared about himself and what he wanted, and ultimately he paid the price for his evil. So, I hope you've learned something despite this terrible event that we've had to discuss today. If you did and you haven't subscribed yet, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button so that you can stay up to date on all of our latest content. We make videos on the Bible, Christianity, faith, church history, and so much more. And if you liked this video, please give it a like, share this video with your friends, your family, your loved ones, and your enemies. Comment down below what you would like to see next for our next Cautionary Tales video. Have a great day, and God bless you so much.